She was moments away from saying "I do," until she heard the one truth that shattered everything: a kiss, a lie, and the betrayal she never saw coming. She walked away from the altar, but he never stopped chasing her. Now he's not a millionaire in a mansion. He's just a man with a heart rebuilt, living next to the woman he lost. Will she forgive him? Or will love come too late? Watch till the end for a heartwarming twist that will stay with you forever. The sun had barely risen when Amelia unlocked the door of her flower shop. The bell chimed softly above the door, a sound she'd grown to love. It meant a new day, new colors, new scents. She wore a pale cream apron, her hair tied up in a loose bun. Her fingers gently arranged tulips in a glass vase as birds sang softly outside her shop window. Life was peaceful in her little world. A warm cup of tea, an old love song playing on the radio, the steady rhythm of trimming stems and humming softly to herself. She didn't need anything more. That is, until the bell chimed again. But this time, it wasn't a regular customer. He stepped inside wearing a fitted dark blue coat, casual but clearly expensive. His deep voice spoke before she looked up. "Do you sell real peace here? Because that's what I'm looking for." She blinked, confused at first, then she smiled. "No refunds if it doesn't work," she joked lightly. His smile was small, guarded, but real. He introduced himself as Jackson Miller, and Amelia didn't recognize the name. Not really. She had no interest in magazines or millionaire gossip. But the way he looked around her shop, like it was the first time he'd ever seen real beauty, that caught her attention. "I just bought a cabin nearby," he said. "Thought I'd bring a bit of life to the place." He left with a bouquet of wildflowers and a strange warmth in his chest. He came back the next day. This time he stayed longer, asked about flower names, asked about the music she played. "I'm not used to this quiet," he admitted, running his fingers along the wooden counter. "Maybe you need it," Amelia replied, not even knowing how true that was. Each visit after that felt softer, warmer. Soon she began waiting for that bell to ring. Sometimes he came in just to talk. Sometimes he brought her coffee, left it on the counter with a quiet smile. Sometimes he asked to sit under the big oak tree outside and just listen. Amelia found herself laughing more. Jackson, once always busy, found himself slowing down, on purpose. He told her pieces of his life, the pressure, the emptiness that success brought. "I had everything," he whispered once, "but nothing felt like this." She shared her dreams, too. Simple dreams. To plant more roses, to teach kids how to grow something with their hands, to live in a world where love wasn't rushed or fake. He listened to every word. People in town began to notice the quiet changes in him. The billionaire who once walked with stiff shoulders now walked with a little more peace, a little more purpose. 6 months passed like a dream. One evening, the sky painted itself gold and lavender. Amelia was arranging daisies when she turned and saw Jackson in a crisp white shirt, no jacket, eyes full of something deep. He dropped to one knee right there on the shop's old wooden floor. "I don't care about the world," he said, his voice low, trembling. "I just want you in it." Her breath caught. She'd imagined love, dreamed of it through pages of worn-out novels, but she never expected it to kneel before her with a ring, eyes so full of truth. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Happy, shocked, overflowing. "Yes," she whispered, falling into his arms. Outside, the wind gently moved the chimes. Inside, two hearts beat in perfect rhythm. And just like that, the quiet life she once knew bloomed into something beautiful and wild. She didn't just fall in love with a billionaire. She fell in love with a man who wanted her world, not to change it, but to belong to it. The wedding was only a week away. Every detail was perfect. White peonies lined the garden path, glass lanterns were ready to flicker under the stars, and soft music would play as Amelia walked toward her future. She had chosen a simple lace dress, one that reminded her of the life she loved. Soft, pure, and free. But more than the flowers or the lights or the dress, it was Jackson that made her heart race. The same man who once stood in boardrooms now stood beside her in muddy boots, planting roses in her backyard. He had traded board meetings for morning coffee runs. He had traded silence for laughter. He had traded everything for her, or so she thought. The estate buzzed with quiet preparations. Cooks finalized menus, florists double-checked designs, and workers polished every surface in Jackson's grand family mansion. Among them was Evelyn. She had once been a private event manager for Jackson's company. Elegant, sharp, with eyes like polished steel. And though she smiled politely, her eyes always lingered too long on Jackson. Too long on Amelia. What most people didn't know, what Amelia didn't know, was that Evelyn had a secret. A secret that had never fully disappeared, no matter how hard Jackson tried to bury it. They had once shared a night, a moment, a mistake. It had happened before Amelia, before wildflowers and long walks. But Evelyn never forgot it, and she never forgave him for moving on. One afternoon, while Amelia sipped lemonade in the garden and flipped through final wedding plans, two staff members stood in the kitchen, gossiping quietly over pastries. "I still can't believe she's marrying him," one of them said. "She's so different." "She doesn't even know the half of it," Evelyn whispered, her voice like silk soaked in venom. "If she knew the truth, she'd never wear that dress." She didn't know the young caterer behind them had paused while picking up a tray. He swallowed hard. His hands trembled as he walked away, unsure what he had just heard, or what to do with it. But the words haunted him. Later that evening, the caterer spotted Amelia by the rose bush near the side gate, checking a list in her notebook. Her smile was soft, her heart clearly full. He hesitated. "Miss Amelia, can I say something?" She looked up kindly. "Of course. I'm not sure if it means anything, but I overheard something. I don't want to cause trouble, but it didn't sound right." He explained, carefully, nervously. He didn't mention names, only the words he'd heard. If she knew the truth, she'd never wear that dress. Amelia froze. The words echoed in her chest like distant thunder. Her hand gripped the edge of the notebook, the corners of the paper bending under her fingers. She nodded slowly. "Thank you," she whispered. Then she turned and walked back toward the house, her legs light but her heart suddenly heavy. She wanted to shake it off. Maybe it meant nothing. Maybe it was gossip. But her heart whispered something else. Jackson had told her he loved her, that he had changed, that she was his peace. But what if there was something she didn't know? The seed of doubt had been planted, and it didn't care how deeply in love she was. It began to grow, quiet and slow in the shadows of her heart. She didn't say anything to Jackson that night. She let him kiss her forehead and tell her how excited he was to marry her. But as she lay in bed later, staring at the ceiling, she couldn't help but wonder, what truth was she not meant to know? And why did Evelyn sound so sure she wouldn't wear the dress? Her hands trembled under the covers. And in the silence of that night, trust began to crack, one whisper at a time. It was the morning of her wedding. The garden was set, bathed in the golden light of the sun. Soft petals fluttered in the wind, delicate as her heart was at that moment. Amelia stood alone in the bridal suite, gazing at her reflection in the mirror. Her gown shimmered in the soft light, every inch of it reflecting the happiness she had built in her mind for this very day. Her heart was full, but not of joy. There was something else now. Doubt. A seed that had been planted and began to take root. She didn't know if it was the words she had overheard, or the way Jackson's touch had felt different lately. But something was wrong. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was a shadow lying over the bright day she had imagined. As she waited, her fingers trembling ever so slightly, she thought about the life she had created with Jackson. She thought about the soft laughter they shared in the mornings, the quiet talks under the oak tree, how he had promised her forever, how he had made her feel like she was the only one in his world. But now the memories felt distant, fuzzy. Suddenly there was a knock at the door. Her bridesmaids filed in, their bright smiles lighting up the room, trying to ease the tension in her chest. But it didn't work. Minutes passed. The ceremony would begin soon. Amelia stood with a sense of urgency, her mind racing, unable to silence the whispering doubts in her head. "Amelia, are you okay?" one of the bridesmaids asked, her voice gentle. Amelia gave a forced smile, nodding. "I'm fine," she whispered. But even to herself it sounded hollow. "I'll be right back," she murmured, excusing herself from the room. She needed air. She needed time alone, time to collect her thoughts. She stepped out into the hallway, the long stretch of space feeling cold and uninviting. The sound of her heels echoed off the walls, each step amplifying the weight of her growing anxiety. Her heartbeat quickened, the sound in her ears nearly drowning out the world around her. She didn't want to listen to the doubts. She didn't want to believe them, but she couldn't help herself. And then, as if fate had cruelly aligned itself, she heard a voice, Jackson's voice. She froze. The sound of his low tone was unmistakable, but what struck her even harder was the other voice, the voice of Evelyn. "I told you, Evelyn." Jackson's voice was thick with frustration. "It meant nothing. It was years ago." A chill ran through Amelia's body. Her breath caught in her throat as she pressed herself against the wall, the moment dragging her into something she had never wanted to hear. Evelyn's reply came soft and almost too calm, like the words had been rehearsed too many times. "But you kissed me just 2 months before you proposed to her. That wasn't nothing, Jackson. You can't tell me it meant nothing." Amelia's heart slammed against her chest. It was as if the world had stopped moving. Her legs turned to stone, her hands cold as they gripped the edge of the wall. Jackson didn't respond immediately, but she could hear him shift his weight, his voice low with regret. "It was a mistake. I told you it was nothing. You know that." Amelia couldn't breathe. She wanted to run. She wanted to scream. She wanted to leave and never come back. But her feet were frozen to the floor. Evelyn's voice cut through the air like a knife, sharp and accusing. "You're just going to pretend it didn't happen. You kissed me, just before you asked her to marry you. I know what that means, Jackson. You never really let go of me." Her eyes filled with tears. She had heard enough. The world had collapsed around her in that one moment. The Jackson she had known, the one who had made promises, who had held her hand through every storm, had betrayed her. And the worst part was that she had known nothing. Her world was falling apart in the quiet hallway behind the wedding venue, a place she had imagined was full of hope and joy. But now it was filled with broken dreams. Her vision blurred, tears running down her cheeks. She didn't know how long she stood there. Every second felt like an eternity. Her heart broke piece by piece as the betrayal washed over her. She could feel the coldness of the stone wall against her skin, but it was nothing compared to the coldness spreading through her chest. Every inch of her body screamed to run, to leave, to escape the man who had once been everything to her. But still, she stood there, hearing Jackson's desperate voice, the voice she had once trusted, now tainted with lies. "I never wanted to hurt her, Evelyn. I swear I never meant for this to happen. But I'm with her now. I love her. And you need to let me go," Jackson pleaded, his voice breaking, a tone she had never heard before. Amelia wanted to scream, to confront them both, to tear everything apart. But she couldn't. Instead, her body moved without thinking. She wiped her eyes, took a deep breath, and quietly turned around, slipping away from the scene before they could even know she had been there. The music had begun to play. Soft, classical notes floated through the warm garden air, mixing with the scent of roses and fresh-cut lavender. Guests sat beneath satin-white tents, dressed in their finest. Smiles filled the crowd, unaware of the storm quietly brewing in the heart of the bride. Jackson stood at the altar, handsome, glowing, unaware. He had never looked more at peace. In his mind, today was the beginning of forever. But for Amelia, forever had just shattered in a hallway. The kiss, the whisper, the betrayal. Yet, she didn't cry anymore. Something inside her had changed. It wasn't rage, it wasn't heartbreak, it was clarity, a painful but powerful awakening. She stood behind the bridal gate, her veil pinned perfectly, her gown flowing like soft silk waves behind her. Her makeup was untouched, but her eyes held something deeper than any color could paint. Truth. And pain. Real raw pain. The wedding coordinator gently opened the doors. The music swelled. Everyone stood. Phones clicked. Heads turned. Gasps were heard. She looked breathtaking, a picture of beauty and calm. But something was different. She wasn't smiling. She didn't hold her father's arm. She walked alone, with quiet strength in each step. And instead of walking toward Jackson, she turned slightly, left, straight toward the staff section near the edge of the garden. Guests whispered. Eyes widened. Jackson's smile faltered. Evelyn, dressed in a sharp black suit, was sipping a glass of water beside the catering table. When she saw Amelia walking directly toward her, with purpose, with fire in her calm eyes, she froze. Everything stopped, even the music. The chatter, the laughter, the breath of every guest. All that was left was Amelia, standing face to face with Evelyn, bouquet still clutched in her hands. Amelia's voice was soft, controlled, sharp like a polished blade. "Thank you," she said, her words slicing through the silence. "Thank you for telling the truth, even if you didn't mean to." Evelyn blinked, stunned. I didn't—" Amelia raised a hand gently, silencing her. "But I want you to know something," she continued, her voice trembling only slightly. "I deserve more than both your lies." The crowd fell into complete stillness. Amelia turned slowly, dress flowing behind her like poetry. Now she faced Jackson. His expression was broken. His jaw slightly dropped, eyes wide, hands twitching at his sides. He had no idea what was coming, but he knew it was bad. "Jackson," Amelia began, her voice louder now, reaching every guest. "You had every chance to tell me. I never asked you to be perfect. I only ever asked you to be honest." He stepped forward, breath caught in his throat. "Amelia, please," he said, his voice cracking. "It was a mistake, a stupid mistake, but it's you I love, only you. That kiss, it meant nothing. You mean everything." She nodded slowly. "I believe you, Jackson." He inhaled deeply, hope flickering in his eyes. But then she added softly, "And that's what makes it worse." The hope disappeared. "You didn't lie because you stopped loving me," she continued. "You lied because you did, and that means I can't trust you." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Then, in front of the crowd, their friends, their families, their future, Amelia stepped forward, placed her bouquet gently on the small table beside the altar, and turned around. Her steps were slow, graceful, final. No drama, no screams. Just a quiet woman choosing herself over betrayal. Gasps echoed through the garden. People watched in disbelief. The bride was walking away, and the groom, the billionaire, was left standing alone at the altar. Amelia passed rows of guests with their mouths open, dresses rustling as people turned to follow her with wide, shocked eyes. Some looked at Jackson, some whispered, some clutched hands or shook their heads, but no one stopped her. Not even Jackson. He stood there, frozen, heart pounding in his chest, watching the only woman he'd ever truly loved walk away. Not because she didn't love him, but because he had broken something love couldn't fix. And just like that, the wedding that should have begun with "I do" ended in silence, and a single woman's quiet, powerful walk into the unknown. The morning after the wedding that never was, Amelia didn't cry in front of anyone. She simply packed a small bag, left her phone on silent, and walked away from the house where so many dreams had lived and died in a single afternoon. She didn't go far. She returned to her quiet little apartment above the flower shop she once owned before Jackson came into her life. Before the parties, before the diamonds, before the lies. The scent of roses greeted her at the door, but today they smelled different, not sweet, but sad. She closed the door behind her and let her back slide down to the floor. For hours she sat in silence. The world outside moved on, but inside her, time stood still. The first call came that evening. It was Jackson. She didn't answer. The second was a message. "Please, Amelia, I never meant to hurt you. I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you." She stared at the screen, but her fingers didn't move. She wasn't ready. The days passed in silence, the kind of silence that speaks louder than any voice. Amelia returned to her flower shop. She watered the lilies with shaking hands. She trimmed the daisies but forgot to price them. Customers came in, saw her pale smile, and left quietly, sensing her heartbreak without asking. She stayed with her closest friend, Lila, who never pushed her to talk. Lila simply sat beside her every night, holding her hand in the quiet. But Jackson, he didn't stop. He didn't show up with gifts, not with jewelry or promises. He sent wildflowers. A small bouquet wrapped in brown paper tied with twine. No card, just a note scribbled in faded ink. Not asking you back, just saying sorry. You were always too good for me. Amelia read it again and again. The handwriting trembled, like his hands had shaken while writing it. She placed the flowers beside her bed, even though they didn't match the decor, even though they reminded her of everything. But something about them felt real. He sent more flowers every week. He never asked for anything, just kept apologizing. In silence, in petals. One day he came to the shop. Amelia watched from behind the curtain, her breath caught in her throat. He stood near the daisies, the same daisies he once helped her replant when a customer knocked them over. He looked thinner, tired, and for the first time unsure of himself. He left a small box on the counter and walked away without a word. She waited until he was gone, then opened it. Inside was a tiny wooden figure, hand-carved, of a woman holding flowers, and a note. I've sold the mansion. I built a home next to your garden. If you ever want to see what honest love looks like, come by. Her hands trembled. She walked to the window, and for the first time in weeks, she noticed something different across the back fence. Lights glowing softly in a small wooden cottage, built recently, lovingly. Not grand, not rich, but real. She closed the curtain, her heart beat faster. She didn't know if she would go. But for the first time in days, a smile dared to touch the corner of her lips. She hadn't forgiven him yet. But something inside her whispered. Maybe healing had begun, and maybe, just maybe, love wasn't lost. It was just finding a better way to be. It was a quiet evening, the kind that made even the stars seem unsure whether to shine or hide. Amelia stood at the edge of her garden, her fingers trembling on the wooden gate. Across the fence, just beyond the roses she had planted with her mother years ago, stood the little wooden house. The porch light glowed gently. A soft golden hue poured out from behind the windows like warmth waiting to be touched. She clutched the note in her hand, the one that had said, "If you ever want to see what love looks like, honest love, come by." Her heart wasn't racing out of excitement. It was trembling from fear, from memories, from hope she didn't dare believe in again. Slowly, one foot moved in front of the other. Every step forward felt like walking into fire, but she didn't stop. She reached the porch. Her hand hovered over the doorbell. Before she could press it, the door creaked open. And there he was. Jackson. No tailored suit, no expensive watch, no smug charm or smooth grin. He wore a simple gray sweater and old jeans. His hair was messy. His eyes held stories: pain, regret, longing, and hope. He didn't speak right away. He just stared, like he couldn't believe she was really standing there. When he finally found his voice, it cracked. "I didn't expect you to come." Amelia blinked, fighting the storm in her chest. "I didn't expect to," she whispered, "but I needed to see." He nodded, stepping aside. "I don't want you to come inside unless you feel safe." She didn't move. "I don't expect anything from you," he added softly. "Not forgiveness, not a second chance. I wanted to become the man you once believed I could be. Not for you. Not anymore. For me." Tears filled her eyes. "You still wear the pain on your face, Jackson," she said, her voice breaking. "And yet, there's something different now, something quiet. I let go of the mansion, the media, the noise," he said. "I didn't lose everything. I found what I'd been hiding from. Myself." Amelia looked past him, at the small living room, the books on the shelves, the wildflowers in a jar. The same flowers from their first meeting. "You remembered—" "I never forgot," he said gently. She took a deep breath, stepping into the light of the porch. "I'm not looking for a perfect man," she said. "I never was." He swallowed, barely breathing. "I'm just looking for something real. Then slowly, without a script, without an audience, without pressure, she reached out her hand. He took it with both of his. No music played, no guests clapped, no cameras clicked, only the crickets sang. Only the breeze wrapped around them like a blessing. And then, under the open sky, surrounded by memories, pain, and something new, they embraced. He held her like a man who had learned to love gently. She leaned into him like a woman who had finally learned her worth. In that moment, nothing else existed. No past, no betrayal, just two hearts, scarred, softened, and willing to try again. Not for a fairy tale, but for truth. A kind of love the world often forgets to believe in. A kind of love that isn't loud but lasts. And as the stars above finally dared to shine, they stood wrapped in each other. A heart rebuilt, and a world reminded that sometimes broken things come back stronger.